They say love has an expiration date. After a certain age, the doors to romance quietly close, and we're left with only memories of what once was. But here's what no one tells you. That couldn't be further from the truth. Let's talk about something most people over 65 are too polite to bring up, and yet they think about it more often than you'd imagine. Finding love again, not just companionship, not just comfort, but real, meaningful love later in life. The kind that makes you smile when no one's watching. The kind that reminds you you're still alive. Now, maybe you've been alone for a while. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you've settled into the quiet of your days and told yourself it's easier that way. But somewhere in the stillness, there's that whisper, that gentle tug in your heart wondering, is it still possible? This video is for you. Not to make grand promises or sell fantasies, but to gently unfold what so many have discovered the moment they let their guard down. The surprising, beautiful truth about love after 65. We'll explore how it's different, why it matters more than ever, and the silent barriers that might be keeping it just out of reach. And maybe, just maybe, by the end of this video, your heart will feel a little more open than it did when we started. So let's begin. You see, the first thing we need to untangle is this quiet belief that love after a certain age is somehow second-rate, as if it's a consolation prize or something you stumble into out of loneliness. But the truth is, love in your later years is often richer, calmer, and more profound than what most people experience in their 20s or 30s. Why? Because by now, you know what really matters. You've lived through the highs and lows. You've seen what lasts and what doesn't. You've learned that good looks fade, sparks dim, and butterflies aren't a guarantee of anything. But shared values, kindness, a hand that reaches for yours, not out of habit, but out of genuine care. That's the stuff that endures. One woman told me she met someone at 72 after her husband had passed over a decade earlier. She wasn't looking. She wasn't even sure she could feel that way again. But there he was, kind, curious, and patient. They met at a gardening club. He complimented her dahlias. She laughed and said they were actually her neighbors. And that small, ordinary moment turned into coffee, then conversation, then a quiet companionship that slowly blossomed into something real. She said it didn't feel like fireworks, but more like a steady flame that kept her warm night after night. That's the thing about love at this stage. It's not about fixing each other. It's not about trying to impress. It's about finding someone whose presence makes the silence feel full instead of empty. Someone who makes time feel lighter, who brings out the softest parts of you again. But here's the challenge, and it's a big one. Fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of starting over. Fear that your body doesn't look like it used to. That your stories are too long. That your life is too settled. That there's no space for new beginnings. Let me tell you something. Everyone, no matter their age, feels that fear, but it doesn't mean love is off the table. It just means you need to start smaller. Kinder, gentler. Love at 65 and beyond doesn't begin with fireworks. It starts with presence, a shared glance, a curious question, a willingness to be seen and to see someone else with the same grace you hope to be given. The second truth is this: the rules of love change, but the need for it doesn't. Maybe your children are grown. Maybe you're used to doing everything on your own. Maybe independence has become your armor, your badge of strength. But strength doesn't mean you stop needing connection. In fact, studies show that people in their later years who experience deep emotional connection, romantic or otherwise, live longer, experience less cognitive decline, and report significantly higher life satisfaction. One man I interviewed said, "I spent years convincing myself I didn't need anyone, and I was fine, really. But once she came into my life, I realized how lonely fine had been." Love doesn't just add years to your life. It adds life to your years. And here's the final thing I want to leave you with in this part of the conversation. Finding love after 65 isn't about dating apps, grand gestures, or putting yourself on display. It's about making room in your schedule, your habits, your heart. It's about letting go of the belief that your story is over, that the pages are written. Because as long as you're breathing, your heart still has chapters left to write. Whether it's a conversation over coffee, a smile exchange in a community center, or a shared laugh with someone new, these are not just moments, they are invitations. Invitations to believe that love still finds a way, even when you're not looking, even when you think you're too old, especially then. So now that we've opened the door to the idea that love after 65 is not only possible, but meaningful, it's time to talk about what it actually looks like. Because here's the thing, love at this stage doesn't follow the same rules it used to. And thank goodness for that. You're not in a race. You're not proving anything. You're not building a future from scratch, like paying off a mortgage or raising kids. No, this kind of love is different. It's less about creating a life together and more about enhancing the one you already have. But that brings us to the next barrier, and it's one many people don't talk about, the fear of being a burden. Maybe you've said it yourself, I don't want to be anyone's responsibility. Or maybe you've thought, why would someone want to deal with all of me, my health issues, my routines, my history? Let me gently challenge that thought. Love, at any age, is never about perfection. It's about presence. And when two people choose each other, not because they have to, not because of obligation, but because they want to, that's not a burden. That's a gift. You are not too much. You are not too complicated. And anyone worth sharing your time will see your story not as baggage, but as richness, as depth, as evidence that you've lived, you've learned, and you still have more to give. One woman told me she met a man in her 70s who had survived cancer, lost a spouse, and walked with a cane. I didn't see any of that as a drawback, she said. I saw someone who had known pain and still chose kindness. And that's the heart of it, isn't it? At this stage, what draws us to someone isn't the car they drive, or their waistline, or how many steps they get in every day. It's how they make us feel. It's whether they bring peace to our nervous system, whether they know how to sit in silence without making awkward, whether their smile makes you feel safe in a world that's changed so much so quickly. Now let's talk about grief. Because for many, the idea of loving again feels like a betrayal of the person they lost. How can I move on? What will my family think? What if I forget them? Here's the truth. Moving forward doesn't mean moving on. Love is not a betrayal. It's a continuation. It's saying, I still have room in my heart. And that doesn't take anything away from what you had. In fact, it honors it. Think of it this way. If someone you love deeply were watching over you, do you think they'd want you to be alone forever? Or would they want your laughter to return, your eyes to light up again, your days to feel a little less heavy? Grief never leaves completely. It changes shape. It softens around the edges. And one of the most healing things we can do is allow joy to come back in slowly, gently, without guilt. There's a man I once spoke with, Roger, 81, who found love again after losing his wife of 49 years. He said, I didn't think it was possible. I thought my heart had shut that door. But then I met Linda, and she didn't replace my wife. She helped me remember who I used to be before the sadness. She brought laughter back into my kitchen. She didn't take up the space in my heart where my wife lived. She created her own corner. That's what love does. It makes space. It doesn't erase. It expands. And maybe the most surprising part, your capacity for love hasn't shrunk. It's matured. You've learned what you can live without. You've learned that peace matters more than excitement. That being understood matters more than being admired. That being seen as you are, with no need to pretend, is more romantic than any box of chocolates or a dozen roses. But you also have to be willing to be seen. And for many people, that means letting down walls you spent years building. Walls of self-sufficiency, walls of sarcasm, walls of I'm fine on my own. And hey, maybe you're fine. But are you full? Are your days filled with laughter that catches you off guard? Do you have someone who notices when your voice sounds tired and asks if you slept okay? Because here's the truth. Love after 65 might not look like the movies. It might not come with candlelit dinners and whirlwind getaways, but it will show up in the quiet moments, in a shared grocery run, in a kind text, in someone remembering how you take your tea. It'll show up in conversations that don't need fixing, in eyes that don't look past you, in hands that don't grab, but gently reach. And if that's something your heart is still open to, even if just a little, then that's all it takes to begin. Let's talk about the hardest part, the part that often keeps love just out of reach, even when your heart is ready. It's not the lack of opportunity. It's not even your age. It's this quiet belief that you missed your chance. That love is something for the young, for the unwrinkled, for those who don't carry the same kind of emotional weight you do. But here's the truth. Love after 65 doesn't require youth. It requires courage. And sometimes that's harder to summon now than it ever was before. Why? Because you know what it's like to lose. You know what disappointment feels like. You've tasted heartbreak, and you've survived it. So the idea of opening up again, of risking even a sliver of that pain, feels heavier now. Like maybe it's just not worth it. But if you lean in a little closer to that fear, what you'll often find underneath it isn't just the fear of being hurt. It's the fear of being vulnerable again, of being seen again. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you let someone really see you? Not just the parts you're proud of, the kind smile, the family photos, the good stories. I mean the parts that ache, the doubts, the insecurities, the mornings when you look in the mirror and barely recognize the face staring back. Most of us walk through our days carefully composed. We show the world what we think it can handle. We edit ourselves just a little. And over time, that habit of hiding becomes second nature. Comfortable, protective. But love doesn't thrive in places that are overly polished. It grows in the cracks, in the quiet, in the realness. I once met a couple who found each other at a bereavement support group. He had lost his wife 2 years prior. She had just said goodbye to her husband of 40 years. They weren't looking for love, far from it. They were simply sitting next to each other, week after week, sharing grief. And that's where love crept in, not through romance, but through recognition. She said, "He saw me when I couldn't even look at myself." That right there is the essence of later in life love. It's less about seeking someone to complete you and more about finding someone who accepts you without needing you to pretend. But here's the twist. In order to find that kind of love, you have to be willing to show up as you are, not as you were, not as who you think you're supposed to be. Just you. That means being honest about your fears, your hopes, your limitations. It means saying, "I might not be able to dance the way I used to, but I still want to laugh over dinner." Or, "My memory isn't what it once was, but I promise to give you my full attention when it counts." And yes, it also means acknowledging the loneliness, even when you're used to being strong. Loneliness after 65 doesn't always feel like sadness. Sometimes it just feels like quiet, like silence at the dinner table, like days that blur together, like the absence of being asked how you slept. And the worst part? We get used to it. We stop expecting connection. We fill the space with routine. And deep down, we start to believe this is just how life is now. But it doesn't have to be. You can still flirt. You can still giggle. You can still hold hands on a walk and feel your heart skip. That desire for closeness, it didn't expire. It just got buried under time, responsibility, and grief. And if you're thinking, where would I even meet someone? I hear you. You're not going to bars. You're not swiping left and right. You're not exactly thrilled about online dating either. But connection doesn't always come from the places you expect. It comes from the moment you join a class just because you're curious, from the time you help someone carry their groceries and end up talking in the parking lot for 20 minutes, from joining a group, even when it feels awkward at first, even from saying yes to a neighbor's invitation, when your first instinct was to say no. Love after 65 is less about searching and more about inviting, about staying open, about giving life just enough wiggle room to surprise you. You don't need 10 options. You just need one person who sees you and says, "I'm glad you're here." And even if it doesn't become romance, maybe it just becomes friendship. Don't dismiss that, because companionship is its own kind of love. And sometimes it's the foundation for everything else. So if your heart has been hiding, waiting, protecting itself, let it know this. It's not too late. You're not too old. And you haven't missed your chance. The pages of your story are still being written. And the next chapter? It might just be the one that brings you back to life in a way you didn't see coming. So here we are. You've made it through the quiet doubts, the unspoken fears, the years of solitude that maybe you didn't ask for, but learned to live with anyway. And somewhere along the way, you might have thought, this is just how life is now. But let me offer this. What if this next chapter isn't just a final stretch, but the beginning of something deeper, something softer, something more true than anything you've experienced before? Because here's one last surprising truth about finding love after 65. It's not about adding something to your life. It's about awakening what's already there. Love at this stage doesn't demand grand plans. It doesn't care about shared bank accounts, vacations, or building a future. It cares about presence, eye contact, a steady hand, someone who remembers how you take your tea, someone who laughs at the same silly commercials, someone who knows when to give you space and when to sit beside you, silently. Love now is less about intensity and more about intimacy. And here's the thing that surprises people most. It's easier than you think. If you let it be simple, you don't need to impress. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You don't need to chase. You just need to be real. There's a kind of magic in two people choosing each other without needing to fix, prove, or perform. When you meet someone at the stage of life, you're not meeting their potential. You're meeting their truth, their scars, their lived-in wisdom, their bad knees and brave heart. And when that's met with your own truth, that's where love takes root. But none of this can happen if you keep yourself hidden behind routine. If you convince yourself you're too old, too complicated, too late. You're not. You're not any of those things. In fact, you might be exactly what someone else is praying to find. Someone steady, someone kind, someone who knows how to weather storms. And if you're still wondering where to begin, here's a thought. Start by loving your own life more deeply, because people are drawn to light, to warmth, to those who carry a sense of peace inside them. When you enjoy your own company, others notice. When you laugh with ease, others lean in. When you share stories with heart, not bitterness, others want to hear more. So take that pottery class. Say yes to the museum trip. Volunteer at the shelter. Go to that community center dance. Even if you sit most of the time, the point isn't to meet someone. The point is to show up for your own life. And from there, things unfold. Because love doesn't always arrive like a bolt of lightning. Sometimes it's a second cup of coffee after a casual chat. Sometimes it's someone who remembers your birthday when no one else does. Sometimes it's a friendship that deepens over time until one day you both realize this is love. And listen, not everyone will understand. Some people may raise an eyebrow when they see you holding hands with someone new. Some may whisper, "Isn't she too old to start dating again?" Let them whisper, because you know the truth. You know that love has no age limit. That connection doesn't check your date of birth. That your heart doesn't stop growing just because the calendar keeps turning. You are not past your prime. You are not invisible. You are not stuck in the past. You are still capable of love that is deep, respectful, joyful, and yes, romantic. You are still worthy of soft kisses, evening walks, belly laughs, and someone looking at you like you matter. Because you do. And if no one has told you lately, let me say it now. You deserve love. Not just any love, but the kind that sees you fully. The kind that says, you don't need to change a thing. So whether it starts with a smile across the room, or a conversation over soup, or a moment of shared silence that feels oddly comforting, don't ignore it. Don't push it away. Let it in. Let it surprise you. Because no matter your age, your story isn't finished. Not even close. There's still music to dance to. There are still mornings that can start with a good morning from someone who means it. There are still memories waiting to be made. And yes, there is still love. Real love. Right here. Right now, if you're willing to say yes. So go ahead. Let your heart stretch a little. Let your life feel a little bigger. Let your smile linger a little longer next time someone makes eye contact. You never know who might be watching, and you never know how close love might be standing. If this video resonated with you, even in the smallest way, leave a comment and tell us what part touched your heart the most. We read every single one. And who knows? Your words might give someone else the courage to open their heart, too. If you haven't already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell. We got more stories, reflection, and encouragement coming your way, and we'd love to walk with you. Here's to second chances, to quiet beginnings, and to the unexpected beauty of finding love again. At any age, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.